Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lisa Williams, and I will be moderating today's session on building strong schools with the PLC at Work process. I am one of Solution Tree's Directors of Educational Partnerships, and I'm available for follow-up questions and conversations. My contact information will also be available at the end of this presentation. A few tips for today's presentation. We will be having a question and answer session during the last 10 to 15 minutes of today's webinar. Please use your chat dialog box both to submit questions for our presenters, but also if you are experiencing technical difficulties. We will try to get these resolved as quickly as possible. We will also answer as many of your questions as time allows. Please send all your questions to the user named Solution Tree. We invite you to follow Solution Tree on Twitter at Solution Tree and to add hashtag STWebinar to your tweets to start a conversation. And now, please let me introduce our presenters for today's webinar, Building Strong Schools with the PLC at Work process. We are extremely pleased and excited to have Rick and Becky DuFour with us to present an introduction of the PLC process. After their introduction, they will turn the session over to PLC Associates Sharon Kramer and Clay Vinyard, Principal of U.S. Grant High School in Oklahoma City Public Schools, where they have seen remarkable student achievement results through the implementation of the PLC process. Thank you, Rick, Becky, Sharon, and Clay for joining us. And now, please let me introduce Rick and Becky DuFour.
Thank you, Lisa.
Their audio's not up. Their audio's gone.
Acronym PLC, or the term professional learning communities, has been used in many, many different ways in the educator lexicon. So we want to start by clarifying what it is, but first what it isn't. A lot of educators think PLC is a one-time event or a program or a new initiative or even a meeting that we've traditionally had where we discuss upcoming events or plan lessons. And we want to contend it's none of those things. That when we really embrace the professional learning community process, it calls upon the educators across an entire school community or an entire district to engage in ongoing collective inquiry. That means learning together in an ongoing way, and then testing out the learning in action research to determine whether or not the new processes, the new strategies, the new pedagogical skills that we're learning together, do they bring about better results for the students that we're serving? Because the key to improving learning for our students in any school, in any setting, is the ongoing job-embedded learning of the adults who serve those students. So if you embrace the definition that professional learning communities as a process, it's wrapped in three big ideas. And the first and the biggest of the big ideas is the fact that as educators, we embrace learning as our fundamental purpose. And because of that, we're willing to examine everything we've traditionally done in our schools, our practices, our policies, our programs, procedures, everything we do through the lens of how does this impact learning, learning for the adults in the community, and very importantly, learning for the students that we collectively serve.
So you have to understand that whereas many people think of the PLC, professional learning communities, as a program that they add on to their existing structure and culture, we contend that it's not a program at all, but it's an ongoing process specifically designed to change the existing structure and culture. The first of the big ideas is a great example of that. Traditionally, schools have operated from the assumption that it was the responsibility of the school to provide students with an opportunity to learn. And whether or not they learned, it was really up to the student. So the job of the teacher was to teach. The job of the student was to learn. The first big idea of the PLC process flips that entirely and says the fundamental purpose of the school is to see to it that all students learn, not merely that they're taught. And because we're really committed to this idea of learning for all students, everyone who's engaged in the PLC process is constantly and recursively working their way through 4 critical questions. It's easy to say we want all kids to learn, but it doesn't become meaningful until everyone in the organization is clear on the answer to the question, learn what? What knowledge, skills, and dispositions do we expect every student to acquire as a result of this course, this grade level, and very importantly, this unit of instruction? Unit by unit, we want to answer the question, what is it we want our students to learn? Secondly, we have to ask the question, and how will we know that our students are learning? What evidence will we be gathering to constantly answer the question, how can we demonstrate that every student has acquired the essential knowledge and skills and dispositions that we intend for them to acquire? Once teams begin to work together to answer that question and gather evidence of student learning, inevitably they find that some students didn't learn, which leads to the third critical question in any school that's committed to helping all kids learn, and that is, so what do we do when they don't? What will our plan be to extend additional time and support to students so that they can acquire the knowledge and skills that we've said are essential in ways that don't remove those students from new direct instruction, and in ways that are systematic as opposed to invitational? And finally, how do we enrich and extend the learning for students who've demonstrated they're already proficient? How can we continue to challenge our high-performing students and give them every opportunity to learn at the possible highest levels? We address these questions in a professional learning community, not in isolation, but rather by working together collaboratively. The collaborative team of teachers is the engine that drives the entire PLC process and the building block of that process. Whereas traditionally schools have been viewed as isolated individual classrooms, now the fundamental structure of the school becomes the collaborative team. And that team is working together interdependently to achieve shared goals for which members are mutually accountable. In a professional learning community, the pronouns change. We no longer say, these are my kids and those are your kids. We say, these are our kids. And every member of our history team is interested in the success of every student who's assigned to history. Every third grade teacher in our building is committed to and contributing to the success of every third grade student in our building.
And so how do we know if they're successful? That leads us to the third big idea, and that is we become hungry for evidence. Learning communities are results-oriented, and we're constantly gathering evidence that informs us about who's learning, who's not learning, and it informs us about our own practice. And we know that Sharon and Clay are going to devote a lot of time and information to that third big idea during the rest of the webinar. So if you were to envision a school or a school district that really is a professional learning community at work, you're going to see that there's a solid foundation that's laid and owned by the educators in that community. In other words, the members of the learning community come together and they clarify what is our fundamental purpose, what is the mission of our school that we're trying to achieve, and then what are we trying to become, that shared vision that all of us are working towards. And we make promises to each other, collective commitments that drive the work. And when this is done well, every stakeholder group, teachers, administrators, parents, students, support staff, every group within the learning community is making promises about what must we do in order to advance the vision and the mission of our school. And we set goals, long-term and short-term goals that help us mark our progress and that cause that results orientation that is so essential to the success of the professional learning community.
So the question that comes up sometimes is, well, why should we commit to this idea of learning for all and the whole PLC process? And the primary reason is that we have a responsibility to prepare students for their future, not our past. And if they haven't learned how to learn, then they are going to be left behind in the American economy. We're preparing students for jobs that haven't even been created yet. And so, whereas in the past, you were illiterate if you couldn't read and write, in the 21st century economy, you'll be illiterate if you haven't learned how to learn, unlearn, and relearn, and continue learning throughout your entire life. And if we're going to fulfill our promise of the American dream and continue to be that city on the hill, then we have to recommit to helping all of our students learn, because our current system isn't working and we're falling behind the rest of the world. And there are serious implications for those students who are not academically successful in schools in the United States today. Whereas throughout most of the 20th century, if a student dropped out of high school, they still had access to good paying jobs in industry and they could have access to the middle class. That's simply no longer the case. A student who drops out of high school in the United States today is 3 times more likely to be unemployed than a college graduate. They're going to be far more likely to live in poverty with an annual salary of just over $20,000. They'll earn 33 cents for every dollar a college graduate makes, and that's the single highest discrepancy in the entire industrialized world. Another way of putting that is that the premium for education in the United States is higher and more beneficial than any other country. They're going to be more prone to ill health, less likely to be insured. This is a startling statistic that there is a direct correlation between years of education and life expectancy. A high school dropout, if a woman who drops out, is going to live 10.5 fewer years than a woman who graduates from college, and for men, it's 13 years, and that gap is getting bigger, not smaller. And they're going to cost taxpayers almost $300,000 over their lifetime. There was just a report that came out from the Organization of Economic and Cooperative Development, and throughout most of the 20th century, the United States led the world in the percentage of its young workforce in terms of its education. They had a higher percentage of college graduates than any nation in the world. Today, we've dropped to 11th. And for the first time in our history, we have a higher percentage of people aged 55 to 65 with college degrees than we do 25 to 35. So the good old way that served us well in the past is not going to prepare our students for the future. And that's why Sharon and Clay and other educators throughout the United States have committed to the PLC process to give kids, every student, an opportunity to learn and continue their learning throughout their lifetime. Sharon, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. So this is the U.S. Grant story. U.S. Grant is a high school in Oklahoma City. It is a school that has the largest in Oklahoma City and had the lowest scores in Oklahoma City and in the state of Oklahoma. And this is their story of how they harness the power from within using the PLC process to move the learning forward. Their commitment is astounding, and the results are amazing because of it. I'm pleased to be able to be a part of the story. I served as a professional learning communities coach here over the years, and I am pleased to just be able to be a part of it and tell their story. So it begins with why they have a reason to celebrate. And so I want to say that by 2010, when they went on their journey and committed to professional learning communities, Grant had been on the Oklahoma State school improvement list for 7 years in a row. They'd been declared a turnaround school, and they'd been given additional funds to turn it around. At that point in time, there was such a culture of failure at Grant that perpetuated itself year after year after year, that everyone here expected the students to fail, include the parents, the staff, the community. The newspaper articles around Grant were just astounding. And so how do you really succeed at that? How do you move out of that culture of failure and create a culture of success? Well, just like this quote from Helen Keller, it really begins with optimism. And I'll never forget when I first got here, the new principal who had been hired, who was Tammy Sanders at that time. She's the former principal of U.S. Grant, and currently she's the executive director of secondary school reform for Oklahoma City. On her bulletin board in the office it said, how hard can this be? And that was the mantra. That was really the mantra. How hard can this be? And I'll never forget, I came in the middle of the year and somebody had written below it, really, really hard, but so worth it. And so that was what started the process. How do we get out of this? It was all about that. Okay, and so we needed to we knew we needed to change the culture first, and that we needed to improve student achievement. The mission for the school became to increase student achievement. It was written all over. We knew it. We'd say it in meetings, you know, what's the end game here? It's about improving student achievement for our kids. So that was the underpinning thing that really underpinned the process. The next thing that Ms. Sanders knew was that really she couldn't do it alone. And so if Tammy was here today, she would tell you that she knew she had to harness the power from within to make it happen. She had to engage every individual in the process through collaborative teams. And so we knew it would take all of us. Now I'm going to review some of the data with you of where they started and sort of where they ended. I do this for two reasons. Professional learning communities is a continuous improvement model. When we go on this journey, we expect students to improve year after year after year. And this data will show that that's exactly what happened across time. In addition to that, I want you to see from where they came, because it was really an amazing kind of turnaround. The first thing we need to understand as we look at this data is in the state of Oklahoma, students in high school not only have to pass their courses and get a certain amount of credits, they also have to pass 7 end of instruction exams. They call those EOIs. And so for 7 courses, they have to take state tests and they have to pass them. And so of the 7, they have to pass 4 of the 7, and 2 of them are designated. They have to pass Algebra 1, and they have to pass English 2. And then the other courses that they need to pass to reach 4 of the 7 can come from other areas. So I'm going to quickly review those 7 EOI courses and show you what the trend was and how far the kids had come along the way. So this is English 2. The courses that they have to pass we used to call the money game, and so this is one of those money game courses, okay? And so you see that they started out low, and every year they improved all the way from 2010 to the 2012-2013 school year. And they continue to improve. The results are not finalized for this school year, but they will show an improvement as well. But what's important about this is this, and the continuous improvement model. In 2012 and 2013, there was an 8% increase. But over time, from 2010 to 2013, there was a 55% increase in student achievement. And you'll see this trend as we review the other EOI courses. Here's English 3. You see the same type of trend occurring. And the same thing here, 27% improvement this past last year, and now over time it was 89%. Here is Algebra 1. This was the one that was absolutely the lowest. The first year they started in 2010, they had 23% of the kids had passed the exam. And last year they were at 91% of the kids. Remember, this is one you have to have for graduation. So this impacted the graduation rate, I mean, like none other. And then here's the increase again. Over last year it was only 12%, but over time it was 295%. Here's geometry, same deal. The trend is all up, and you'll notice that they also had a growth rate last year of 42%, and they ended up overall at 107. And Algebra 2, look at this one, 81%. They were higher than the school in the district that recruits their students and is a magnet school last year. They were very proud. And so the reality is that over time, it looks like this for Algebra 2, 145% last year and all the way up to 523. Here's biology. Now biology has a interesting story. You'll see that they're the only ones with the trend that went up in 2011 and 2012 and then appears to have regressed and actually regressed in 2012 and 2013. In 2012, 2013, they changed the test, changed the proficiency scores, and across the state, this is what it looked like. Everywhere. So they had they have a bounce back opportunity this year, and we're looking for them to do way better. And so last year they regressed, but over time it was at 82%. Here's U.S. history. This was a kind of interesting one because when we first started down this road, U.S. history was the highest. Notice they had a 37% pass rate, and they were pretty proud of that. And we said, well, I don't think that's good enough. And so over time, you see what happens. They ended up with a 38% increase last year and 116 over time. So that's one huge indicator of success, especially in Oklahoma, where you have to pass those tests in order to graduate. But there are other indicators along the way, or signposts, that say we were doing really well. In Oklahoma, they have an A through F accountability system for schools. Grant was what I consider to be an F-. I mean, they were the lowest of the lows. And over the 3-year period, they raised their score from that F- to an 89 points, which was, according to the state, a B+, 1 point from an A, and we like to call it an A- here instead of a B+. Then other indicators that don't come necessarily from the state. The National Math and Science Initiative, Boeing Corporation, and the State Department of Ed here awarded U.S. grant $495,000 to offer AP courses this past year that we just finished. The reason they did that is because they knew that we needed to increase our AP offerings. The year before, there were only 3 AP offerings here, and last year were 13 courses. So over a 2-year period, we increased the AP offerings from 3 to 13. And we all know that that gives kids opportunities way beyond the high school. So we were really excited about that. And we started enrolling kids the first year. There were only 50 kids. We were up to 205 last year, and we're proud to say that we have over 300 students currently enrolled in AP courses at U.S. Grant. And so this was a real boost to that. In addition to that, our AP government course last year, and I think this is pretty amazing because when you don't have AP structures in place as a high school, that means your prerequisite courses may not be ready or prepare kids for what the rigor of an AP course. But our AP government teacher had 15 kids in his AP government course, and he had 13 qualifying scores of 3, 4, and 5 out of 15 last year. So amazing things are happening, and there are lots of indications that it's going really, really well. So I wanted to demonstrate using this data that this is a continuous improvement process, and that once you're on the journey, you're never done, that you continue to grow year after year, and certainly that's been the U.S. Grant story. And now, Clay, I want to talk a little bit about the key attributes of success, and then I'm going to let Clay talk about what he felt were the greatest challenges or barriers in the process. So, you know, here's the deal. As you look at those wonderful results, some of you are probably sitting back thinking, wow, that's really great, but how? How did they do that? Well, the good news is it doesn't take superhuman powers, that we really can do this as a school, as long as we harness the power. Well, the first thing that we did, and the thing that's most important to do, is we really did professional learning communities. In other words, we didn't talk about it for a year. The sense of urgency was right there in front of us, and we decided we were going to become a professional learning community. And the first step in doing that was to build some shared knowledge around what it is we were doing, and then to jump right in. We jumped right into the middle of it. We all worked on what it was as we were learning, and we weren't afraid to fail forward a little bit. It really did help us. And the principal and the administrative team put in structures and supports that supported that work all the way along, and I'm going to tell you what those are in a minute. And then we started this out by saying they were in a culture of failure. We knew we had to move that as well, because you can't do it unless you believe you can do it. And so we started telling a different story. The way we did that is we said, from here on in, we want to tell only the stories that we find that are positive about what our kids are able to do. We want to be able to highlight those things that are going well, because in order to change from a cycle of failure to an engine of hope, that's exactly what you have to do. So what are some of the structures and supports that we put in? First and foremost, you heard Rick and Becky say this, we put in daily team collaboration right into the regular school day. And it was required. Teachers were not invited to collaborate. They weren't asked to come together. They were told that this is the way we're going to do our business here at U.S. Grant. And in order to do that, we gave them ongoing professional development around what would that look like if we were going to function and operate as a collaborative team. We also did just-in-time professional development on a team-by-team basis. In other words, teams came to us and said, we don't know how to collect the data. we don't really know how we can use our system to be able to write common assessments. Well, then we provided that in a team meeting right there when they needed it. And then the most important thing, I think, that we did, and that really I credit Ms. Sanders with doing that first year, was that she kept her eye on the ball. Whatever initiative came through, whatever new thing, whatever anybody wanted to do, she always asked that question: how does this support our mission of increasing student achievement? How does this fit in what we're already trying to do? And basically everything that wasn't going to get us where we needed to be, she limited those initiatives and moved it forward by focus, focus, focus. Additionally, we also tracked teacher and student attendance, because attendance here was a huge problem, both teacher and student attendance. And so as we tracked that, we did not also pull teachers out from direct instruction for meetings or for professional development. All that was done during the collaborative team time, because the message was really clear. At U.S. grant, learning is required, it's not optional. And so we knew we needed to put our best people in front of kids as many days as we possibly could to make that happen. Then, once we had the teams working, one of the highest leverage strategies I think research would support is that using data and assessments is really what helps you get to greater achievement. So the teams developed, and were required to develop, frequent, common, formative, and summative assessments. And they used the Oklahoma blueprint so that the work that they were doing was really aligned very well to the end of instruction assessments. And then they also determined the depth of knowledge required to pass the test. We weren't just teaching the stuff, they were teaching at the level and the application levels that kids needed to be able to be successful. And then, based on those assessments, we were absolutely relentless on the use of data to drive instruction, by standard, by student, and by need. And so, every coaching session started with, so what data do you have to show me? Tell me what you did with this data, and how are we going to move this forward? So it was really, we were really relentless around that. And then once we had data, we did the next 2 questions in a PLC. What do you do about the data? And so this staff decided to do whatever it takes. And here are some examples of what they did to really move this forward. They double blocked all students in the tested subjects. In other words, there's an English course and an English enhancement course. There's a Math Algebra 1 course and an Algebra 1 enhancement course. And they teamed those 2 teachers together with the same kids so that they could plan together and work together and make sure that they were helping and supporting the kids. They did tutoring before and after school every day. They also problem solved based on data by student need. In other words, we never said, oh, I think this student is having a problem. We said, what exactly do you have to show us that supports this student's problem, and what's the root cause of the problem so we can help with that. And then they did interventions around attendance, tardies, and things like that that really impact achievement in a negative way. And so we had a system where we called parents for the first incident. We had a conference with the kids as a team. We did a whole bunch of stuff like that that really served as interventions around those things that were affecting student achievement. Individual seniors reviews were done to ensure graduation requirements. The students here, when we first got here, there were 204 seniors that weren't going to graduate because they were either lacking credits or they were lacking a test that they didn't take from the end of course assessments. And so we had looked at that student by student, and we determined what was the best pathway for that student to get a diploma. And maybe it wasn't the traditional way that you got a diploma here, but a student who was there and it was their senior year shouldn't waste an entire year and not come out of school without a diploma. And so we looked at each student individually. We also used every assessment opportunity and window there was for kids to retest for graduation requirements. We tested all year long in the windows that the state allowed. They also are on almost a full year calendar, school year calendar, but they have intersessions, which are 2-week time blocks where the students are out of school, it's their breaks. And during that time, they offer an intersession opportunities where we reteach the end of instruction courses, and we invite kids to be here. That's by invitation, but it is available, and the teachers here hound the kids. They absolutely stalk them to get them here. And then, in addition to that, on courses like Algebra 1 and English 2, which we know are the ones that are most important for graduation, they run boot camp days prior to the actual testing for first-time test takers. And basically what a boot camp is before that day you don't attend any of the rest of your classes, you have a whole day on Algebra 1. You have a whole review day on English 2. And those have proved to be pretty successful. And then, right before testing, they do something we call triage here. And what that is every team member in a tested subject area, all 9th grade teachers, for instance, will help the Algebra 1 teachers teach those remedial skills that need to be taught before the test. And they use their planning periods to do that. So all day long, we're pulling kids out of classes in order to have some more triage based on the assessments and the need. So what I think really happened overall is that we had really strong leadership here at U.S. Grant High School. There was no doubt that the administrators here led this work out. But we also had really hardworking teachers who decided to put the kids first. And that's what really needs to happen. And the entire staff learned along with the students. This was a learning by doing activity. Nobody jumped into this and said, I know everything there is to know about professional learning communities. We all got into it and said, well, we have a lot to learn, so what are we going to do first? How are we going to make this work? And then most of all, this is a story of the students that they serve. These amazing students persevered despite that long road and lots of bumps ahead of them. Remember, they were behind. It's really hard to be excited about moving forward when you have such a long road to go on. And then the result really was more opportunities for the kids here that they serve and more options. But more importantly, this school district is moving down this road as a district now at the secondary schools. And they're doing that because they have a model in district that has worked and gotten amazing results. And they are also a school that is on the Evidence of Effectiveness website, allthingsplc.info. And basically, they're a school that is an example of when it works, this is what it looks like. So I'm pleased to have been a part of that. I'm going to turn this over to Clay Vinyard, the principal of U.S. Grant, and he's going to talk about some of the challenges along the way.
Thank you, thank you. First, I want to talk about the demographics of U.S. Grant High School. We are an urban high school located on the south side of Oklahoma City. When this demographics were taken, we had about 1,400 students. This year, we actually enrolled over 1,800 students. And I think that we're actually getting, it's not that we're getting more students in our attendance area, we're not losing kids anymore, though. Kids are being successful. Kids are staying in school. So we have increased enrollment by a significant amount. 4 years ago, before PLCs came into our school, we only had about a little over 1,200 kids enrolled here. So we have literally increased by 50% over the last 4 years. We are a very low socioeconomic community here. We have 98% of our kids are eligible for free and reduced lunches. We have 30% of our kids are English language learners, but we have more than 70% of the kids in our school that have at one time been serviced by the ELL department. The 30% are the kids that are just currently being served. We also have 15% of our kids are special education students. And demographic breakdown, we have more than 90% of our students are minority, and I know that every inner city public school, regardless of what it is, deals with all the same things that we deal with. So the success that we're experiencing can be experienced anywhere, whether you're urban, suburban, any school. 4 years ago, our local newspaper, the Daily Oklahoman, actually dubbed our school a dropout factory. We're in a very highly gang-populated area. Another headline, I think, when we finally got the school improvement grant was ground zero for educational reform. And, you know, there's a lot of things that go into communities, but one thing is stories that people are telling. And 4 years ago, this was not a desirable place for students to be, for teachers to be. And I really think that, you know, now with the success that we're experiencing, we're starting to change that culture. The first challenge in changing the school was staffing. Under the school improvement grant, we had over 64 teachers. It was a turnaround model, and under the turnaround model, 50% of the actual staff is to be let go. So 64 teachers that first year were fired, And so staffing is very important. The people that do the work here, the teachers and the students, are all important, but we look for great teachers who believe in kids and are going to give kids hope. We look for teachers that are willing to collaborate and work together, and all of the staff here. I've worked in 4 Oklahoma City public schools. I've never been in a school where people come in every single day focused on student learning, focused on student success, focused on working as hard as they possibly can to give these kids the opportunities that they deserve. Challenge number 2 was it's risky doing this. You have to take a lot of risks. We focus relentlessly on learning, and to do that, we have to make a lot of tough choices. Even last year, we had one of our English 2 teachers was not doing as well as we would like the teacher to have been doing, and we made a choice to change teachers out in October, and that hurt a lot of feelings. But we are not in this to worry about adult feelings. We're in this to do the best thing for kids. And so when you're doing the best things for kids, sometimes you have to make tough decisions that aren't always popular. But if you know it's the best thing for the kids, it's an easy choice to make. We also give teachers collaborative time, and that does take away one period they could be teaching. So that comes to a great cost to the district. But like I said, I think it's more than worth it. But that is risky. It does increase the amount of manpower that you'll need to do this, but it's definitely worth it. Challenge number 3 was the culture. People tend to live up to expectations, and like I said, 4 years ago, there were multiple suspensions. I think there were 4 police officers that actually worked inside the school then, and every story you heard about U.S. Grant 4 years ago was bad. And I think that starting now, not only are the kids telling a different story, but teachers are telling a different story. Every single time you ask a teacher about U.S. Grant, they'll tell you all the great things about U.S. Grant. You ask the kids about U.S. Grant, they'll tell you all the great things about U.S. Grant. We have to start out now. We are not the U.S. Grant from 4 years ago. Our culture has shifted. And you see that through things like the NIMSY grant that Dr. Kramer alluded to. We were also honored at the State of the State address by the governor last year because of the improvement that our schools made and the success that our kids have had. Challenge number 4 is looking through data, and that goes back to focusing on the learning. When we look at our common assessments and we look at the data that comes with the assessments, we really want to focus on what it says. No matter how ugly it is, no matter how much it hurts, the teachers here are proud to put their work up on the board and say, you know, look how great I did, or can anyone help me? And I think that's really part of collaboration that's important, is being truthful, being honest, and being open for suggestions, for discussions. And I see that in PLCs every single day here. I want every teacher to be truthful, because it does no good to come into a meeting and lie or skew data or manipulate it to make you look good if at the end of the year you're not letting kids be successful, or you're not helping kids be successful. The 5th challenge we had was taking time to celebrate. And Ms. Sanders actually started the celebration trend here. Before she got here, the school had never had an awards assembly. And these kids literally, we bought these little $3 medals, and they came in, they gave them away for honor roll, they gave them away for perfect attendance, and these kids would wear these medals around for a month at a time, and then when they quit wearing them, they'd tie them on their backpacks. So we're celebrating little wins at first to get this going. And the kids moving in and out of remediation. 3 years ago, or actually even last year, we had multiple singleton classes in which we had to have kids. We make schedules based on kids' needs. So we would have second semester English in first semester. We'd have first semester English in second semester. But you know, part of becoming more successful is we're not having to make as many amends to our schedule to fit in kids' deficiencies, because they're having less deficiencies. So we celebrate that. You know, I think every single time. I think 4 years ago we had just a little over 100 seniors in a class of 1,200, or in a school of 1,200 kids. This year we have 345 seniors in a school of 1,800. Also 4 years ago, we have something called Super 7 seniors, And we have those 7 EOIs that Dr. Kramer talked about that kids have to pass at least 4. In a lot of suburban schools around Oklahoma, a lot of kids pass all 7. In Oklahoma City Public Schools, that's not always the norm. And 4 years ago, we had less than 30 that had passed all 7 of their EOIs. And I'm proud to say that at the beginning of this year, we already have 138 of those 350-something seniors that have already became Super 7 seniors. We give them very small tokens like a medal to wear at robing when they go through graduation. We give them a Super 7 t-shirt. We actually bring out the Rumble, who is our mascot of the Oklahoma City Thunder, out and have a big assembly for them. But really having these small victories is the only way to change the culture. Really talk up success. Give people, acknowledge your teachers, acknowledge your students when they're doing well. This is a picture of our Super 7 seniors last year. We ended up with over 165 because they are testing, they're still taking tests throughout their senior year. This is the very first of last year where we had 115, so we're even up, 23 more people than we had last year at this time. And closing thoughts, this is a quote. I think this kind of summarizes things that U.S. Grant, or I guess the creed that embodies U.S. Grant, is that we care more than others think is wise, we risk more than others think is safe, we dream more than others think is practical, and we expect more than others think is possible. And I appreciate you letting me come on here and tell our story. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Lisa.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate hearing your story. That is truly inspiring. So we do have time for some questions, and so let's get straight to that. Our first question came in from South Jordan Middle School in the Salt Lake City, Utah area. And this is a district that is, this is a school that has high proficiency scores. 93% students proficient in language arts, 89% in mathematics, 89% proficient in science. And what this school is trying to do is they're targeting their non-proficient students and trying to implement an RTI program that's going to support these students and advance them. But where they're having a question is they don't know how to enrich the majority of their students while providing the right intervention for their non-proficient students during their same block of intervention time. So we need some suggestions for this issue.
You said this was a middle school?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Yes.
Okay. I'll just start by saying I think that question 3 and question 4 go together. If you're going to do interventions for kids that aren't learning, then obviously the rest of the students have to be doing something that's productive and worth their while. And I like to think of that, I know it's really differentiation, but I like to think of that as honoring student learning. And so what I think may work is that if students have demonstrated that they have the ability to do that, that we create extensions to their learning that actually honor the learning. In other words, that isn't repeat of what they've already done, but that allows them to show or demonstrate that they can take what they've learned and move and step it up. So I encourage teams of teachers to talk about that and to go through all the 4 questions, not just stop at, gee, how did they do and what are we going to do for interventions, but to also answer question number 4 when they're doing it, which would be what are the rest of the kids going to do? In other words, what are we going to do to extend the learning for those students that haven't? And when teams plan that and they're proactive about it rather than reactive about it, they come up with some really excellent activities that are really that honor student learning and are respectful tasks that really push the kids forward. So I'm all for flexible grouping around those kinds of ideas. I'm all for looking at that in a proactive way versus a reactive way. Now, I'm not exactly sure if that's the answer that they're looking for or the exact purpose of the question, but I think that's what we have to do. We have to start looking at as a team effort. What is it that teams are going to do to answer all 4 questions, not just 1 or 2 and 3? So I think that would be a part of what they need to be doing.
And there was a related question right after that one from a different district that said, too many of our high-performing students are bored during the time that we have set aside for intervention because what they're being provided is it may be time just to do makeup or study hall time, and it doesn't turn into a productive time period for these students who are highly proficient. So I don't know if someone else wants to respond to that.
Well, I think Sharon answered that question very well when she said that it just becomes part of the team planning process so that at the end of each unit, the team should have a conversation really at the beginning of the unit as they're planning it. When we come to that point at the end of the unit where some kids are going to need intervention, what are those things that we're going to provide students who need extension and enrichment? And it can't be more of the same. It can't be filling out worksheets and busy work. It should be genuine extension and enrichment. We know some schools, for example, where they created a number of enrichment and extension activities during that intervention time. That's when the Model UN team would meet for the middle school. The math team would meet. It's when an English teacher would conduct a great books reading group with some kids. The band director might be having different sectionals each day to work with kids and giving them more individual attention. And so they would create all these different options for students that gave them opportunities to extend their learning and pursue areas where they're already proficient. And for those students who didn't want to pursue that, there was a drop everything and read. Everybody in that middle school was required to have a book that they would be reading, and in many instances, they would designate a book for the grade level to read and have conversations about that book. So I think there are a lot of different things that a team can do, but when we did our research for the book, Raising the Bar, we looked at something like 36 or 39 different schools, and in every one of those schools that said, how will we respond when kids don't learn, they also addressed that fourth question, and not only did they improve upon the percentage of kids who were demonstrating proficiency, but they showed tremendous improvement in the percentage of kids moving from proficient to advanced. I can tell you that at my former school, Stevenson High School, in suburban Illinois, in Lincolnshire, Illinois, when we began this process, we had, back in 1985, we had 83 students writing AP exams, and that represented 7% of the senior class. Last year at Stevenson High School, 89% of the senior class had written an AP exam. So the fact that you're intervening for students who might be struggling does not preclude you from enriching and extending and pushing and challenging kids who are proficient. So we can open a lot of doors for kids if we come together and figure out what are the ways that we can expand opportunities for students who are already proficient. And that has to be one of the questions that each team takes on as a challenge.
And as Sharon mentioned, there are many schools under the Evidence of Effectiveness link on all things PLC, including U.S. Grant, and those schools are called upon to describe what happens when kids do learn in our school. What are the systems and processes we put in place? So anyone interested can virtually visit elementary, middle, high school, urban, suburban, rural on that website. But the best teams that are addressing this question are looking at the 21st century skills. They're looking at what will our students need to be successful in the economy as we send them into the workforce, into higher ed. And they're using problem-based learning, critical thinking, problem-solving activities to really challenge those kids who have learned to take it to the next level and to apply these newly learned skills in very deep and meaningful ways. So again, it goes right back to what will the team do and what will the school ensure will be our answer to how will we respond when kids don't and when they do learn.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Next question, what is the balance between administrators working with collaborative teams to monitor team progress and allowing teams to work themselves? In other words, are there any guidelines for walking the fine line between monitoring and micromanaging?
Yeah, we think that is an inherent challenge in the process, and that sometimes well-intentioned administrators can err on either side. It would be a mistake to micromanage the process and feel like if I'm not there, the team's not doing anything worthwhile. But it would also be a mistake to say, well, I just trust my teachers, I'm going to let them wing it and not have any process in place for monitoring and determining when a team is struggling or when a team has become unclear about the work that they need to do. So we think that the best solution to that question is for teachers and administrators to agree on what should result, what should be the product that results from a team that's focused on doing the right work. And so we came up with a list, and it's on the All Things PLC website. It's called 18 Critical Issues. And it's a series of questions that teams who are focused on the right work would engage in. Many of them are like an annual question. We'd ask it once a year or twice a year. But most of them are recursive questions that we're going to ask for each unit. As I tried to lead the process as a principal, I simply made sure that the teams were clear on the work that they needed to focus on. And we had agreement on that. They agreed, yes, this is what we should be focusing on. And then we established a timeline for when the teams would be generating the product that should naturally result from their focus on the right work. So for example, if we say teams will be more effective if they have clarified their commitments to one another, I could then say to a team, have you clarified your commitments to each other? And when I did, I wasn't looking for yes as the answer. I was looking for, here are our commitments. You can't be a team until you have a goal, and I want that goal to be focused on student learning. Do you have a student learning focused goal? I wasn't looking for yes. I wanted to see the goal. Have you administered a common assessment? I didn't want to hear yes. I wanted to see the common assessment. So the best way to handle this is for teachers and administrators to agree on the work that needs to be done, agree on a general timeline of when it should be done, and if a team is unable to generate the work, that's when leaders need to understand this is a team that's either unclear about the work, or they're having conflict, or something has gotten in the way of them being successful. And my job is to create the conditions that allow them to be successful. I need to intervene. I need to work with the team leader. I need to work with the full team to get them back on track. So that would be, I think, the absolute best way to answer that question. And it's not an either-or question. It's not should the administration decide or the teachers decide. It's they both should decide. They should decide on the right work, reasonable timelines, and a process for monitoring that work.
Okay, thank you. We have another question back to interventions from a school or district that says we are allowing our math and science teams who are using formal assessments and data collection to determine which students go to an intervention time. In the meantime, the rest of the students are using that same block of time to work at grade level, skill, or standards reinforcement activities. So they're hoping that this is an okay system as they have other departments working on unpacking standards, working on collaborative practices such as common assessments, and using data to inform their instruction. So for 2 hours each Friday morning, before students come to school during, I know I'm echoing a little bit, there's a late start, and these students come to this intervention time for their math and science. They're wondering if they're a little bit ahead of themselves on interventions right now, or if you have any ideas to help the process that they're using. as different students and staff are working on different things within the school day.
I'm not sure I understood the question, and if Sharon did, I'll defer to her. But I would say there is absolutely nothing wrong with students doing different things during the school day based on the needs of those students, and that it's a big mistake when schools feel that all students, regardless of their success or lack of success, proficiency or lack of proficiency, need to be receiving the exact same instruction at the exact same time and the exact same amount of minutes. If the math and science people have said, this is, we can use this block of time to intervene for our students and give them extra time and support to ensure that they're being proficient, and they're using the results of their common assessments to identify the kids who need that extra time and support, I see that as a very, very positive thing. The idea that while those kids are getting intervention, other kids are simply reinforcing what they've already learned, I would see as a less positive thing. To me, that sounds like, you know, okay, you've already demonstrated proficiency, but here's a worksheet. Do another 50 problems to prove to me that you're proficient when they've already proved that they're proficient. So based on my limited understanding of the question, my suggestion would be that they would rethink the idea that kids who are already proficient just need to continue practice, that it could instead be something that's more of an extension and enrichment activity.
Sharon, did you have a comment?
Only that I totally agree with Rick. I think that that we don't, as I said before, we don't honor student learning when we give kids more of the same. And so I would ask, what's different about this? How are we extending the learning? How are we honoring the learning that's occurred already? That's what we really want to do in a growth mindset, which is, you know, we want kids to continuous improvement. You have to have a growth mindset to do that. And so how do we keep these kids continuing to grow, not holding a place? I was in a school district once, and one of the teachers said to me something that I thought was the most profound thing I'd heard, and I'd been working at this for lots and lots and lots of years. And she said to me this, she said, I am most concerned about the students in my classroom who spend most of their day watching others learn. And so when I heard that, it really reminded me very much that we need to make sure we are extending the learning for the students that have already learned. That's what I think would be a respectful task for kids. So I agree with Rick.
Let me just throw in a plug here. If that team, let's say that math team, is looking for, well, what are ways, if a student's demonstrated proficiency in this math skill, what are ways that could extend that skill or challenge or enrich? A really helpful site would be the Marzano Research Lab. And on that lab, they've broken down by course and by grade level sort of a rubric of student learning where it would define, this is what proficient looks like in this math skill, and this is what advanced would look like, where it's an extension, it goes beyond what's been taught, and the student has to demonstrate the ability to apply the knowledge that they've learned. So Marzano Research Lab might be a helpful resource for a team that's saying, we can't really come up with anything to extend and enrich the learning for our kids.
Okay, thank you all. We are about at the end of our session. I don't think we have time for any more questions, and we want to thank Rick and Becky and Sharon and Clay very much for joining us today. We hope that all of you on the webinar have gained some insights into the power of implementing professional learning communities within your school and your district. If you would like to discuss how to get started or how to deepen your PLC journey, please contact me and we can discuss plans where I can get you in touch with the right person in your state. You may contact me toll-free at 800-733-6786, extension 408, or call my cell phone, 740-787-5800. 350-2777. You may also email me at lisa.williams@solution-tree.com. We also encourage you to take a short survey to give us feedback about today's webinar to help us improve your experience for future webinars. By completing this survey, you'll be entered into a drawing to receive this awesome book bundle of our top-rated PLC resources. And a link to this survey will be sent to you shortly after this session. There were a few questions about this. So yes, this webinar has been recorded, and the recording and the handouts will be available shortly at solutiontree.com under free resources. And you will be sent a link to this recording within the next 5 business days. So please don't hesitate to contact me if I can assist you in any way. Thank you so much for your time, to our presenters and to our participants. And this session is now ended. Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank
you.
Bye.